Hey, it's syndicated radio talk show host, author, singer Al Cole, welcoming you to another edition of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. I come from CBS Radio. My shows are nationally syndicated, and I've helped to pave the way to treating women, guys too, with the dignity that they deserve. And I do that through my show, People of Distinction, aired on top networks, including, you could say the toppest, Apple's iTunes Radio Network under their professional news talk division, airing CBS shows, Fox News, NPR, BBC, C-SPAN, the whole kit and caboodle there. Best talk in the country around the world on Apple's iTunes Radio Network under News Talk. And don't forget to check out my website, peopleofdistinction.org. Consulting that I do, my major media consulting, and also some of the clients that I have and associates, including Ariana Huffington of the Huffington Post. And while you're there, also check out how you can email me if you have any questions about anything that you want to email me on. And you can email me at al@alcoholic.com. You heard me right. al@alcoholic.com. And I really want to thank my CBS radio listeners for coming up with that handle, Alcoholic. I'll tell you, it seems like from day one, my listeners have been saying, Al, we love what you're doing there, brother. In fact, we're hooked on it. We're Alcoholics. Love that. And I'm also a New York Times best-selling author with Chicken Soup for the Soul. Chicken Soup for the Soul is distributed by CBS's Simon & Schuster, so we keep it in the family that way. Coming up, you're going to really love this guy. Interesting stuff that he's going to be talking about. His name is Robert Maddock, and he's not just any old Robert out there. I mean, there are a lot of Roberts in this world. But this guy, I'll tell you, he was a second lieutenant in the Marine Corps back in the 50s, and he was part of a super secret mission that you never heard about before, people. But, it might have affected your life. Because this is really big stuff that he's talking about. I'm going to put it this way. He's got a book, Operation Wappen. Now, have you ever heard of Operation Wappen? Probably not. But I want you to Google this, all of my listeners. Operation Wappen. W-A-P-P-N. And you're going to really be impressed by what this is all about. We know about Syria in the news. All right, so Syria's been in the news now, the Middle East and everything, not only just this year and last year, but for many, many, many years. And Syria, well, they're supposed to be an ally of the United States. They are in the Middle East, and so they are mostly an ally, but sometimes, sometimes they're against certain policies of the United States or whatever, and we're against their policies. All right. But you didn't know that sometime in the 1950s, there was a CIA and UK plot to overthrow the Syrian government. Wow. It was super, super secret. Not too many people knew about it, but Robert did. In fact, Robert didn't just know about this plot to overthrow the Syrian government at that time. He was part of it. Like I said, Marine Corps, second lieutenant, out there participating in this mission. And Ike, President Eisenhower at that time, well, he got wind of it and, he put an end to it, according to Robert. But Robert's going to give us a lot of details on this. You are going to be dumbfounded, people. Yeah, smart-founded, really. Hey, this is going to increase your knowledge base of what the Middle East might really be like and how everything started there in the 50s. And I want you to order this wonderful book, Operation Wappen, at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, online bookstores, and really get involved in learning about this and how maybe Syria is still responding to that. Oh, you wanted to overthrow our government? Well, you never know about the outlays that still might occur here. Okay, so look over that book, Operation Wappen. And I will say that he was brought to my show by a great book mover in the business, and that's UR Link. UR Link, if you've got a book you want to move, UR Link, they're your movers. And you can go to urlinkpublishing.com Armament.com. And I will say that I'm really honored to introduce my son, Benji Cole, who is the co-host of this show and many shows to come. And this guy is really outstanding, too. He's an actor. He's been on stage with some of the greats, Tom Hanks, etc. And he's a filmmaker, too, out in Los Angeles. And he's contributing his talents and his efforts to People of Distinction right now. So I'm going to introduce Benji, and he's going to guide Robert into some of the right questions that then you will really get the inside view of Operation Wappen. Welcome to People of Distinction, Benji. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, Al. Thank you very much for having me. Definitely looking forward to embarking on this journey with you. And really, the focus here today is all about Robert Maddock and Operation Wappen, the war that never was. I'm on the edge of my seat. It's definitely something that I've been really looking forward to and doing the research and just kind of learning a little bit more about this. And I'm very excited to have Robert on the show here with us today. So, guys, let's jump right in. There's so many different layers and a lot of different things that we can go into. And as Al already represented, who knows how this could have shaped and formulated our country if things had gone otherwise. So first and foremost, let's just get right to the skinny, as the kids would say these days. If there's one thing, Robert, that you really want our audience to be able to take and pull from this, what is one thing that they absolutely have to know about Operation Wappen?
Operation Wappen was a super secret mission hatched by our CIA in conjunction with the British MI6, which is equivalent to our CIA. It happened in, interestingly enough, October of 1957. That was the same year, and just before it happened, Sputnik was put up by the Russians. And there were a number of things going on. This is a true October surprise. Our mission was to overthrow the Syrian government with a Marine Corps landing. The Marine Corps unit to participate was 3rd Battalion, 6th Marines, which was known as the Devil Dogs of World War I. Everybody in that unit wore a pogey rope in commemoration of that particular nom de plume, if you will. It also had won a Presidential Unit Citation during World War II for its landing in Tarawa. So this is a well-known military unit. At the time, we were all bachelors from the colonel down. You could not be married and be in that unit. It was too dangerous, I guess. But at any rate, we were there, and we were standing off the shore of Syria on October 17th, 1957. Our only armament, get this, our only armament was nuclear.
Can you actually explain that a little bit more for our viewers that aren't necessarily up to date with all the terminology? What do you mean when you say that your only armament were nuclear, Robert?
And this, I was able to find this out. As you may know, I was the artillery forward observer. We had just completed an operation called Operation Deepwater, which was interestingly enough, the first helicopter landing of an intact infantry battalion behind enemy lines, ready for combat. It was done for NATO observers up in northwestern Turkey, in European Turkey. Came off without a hitch. Nobody died. No helicopters crashed. It was a perfect mission. And it was the first of its kind to demonstrate this particular tactic. It was used extensively during Vietnam and ever since then. That's what we just finished. We were sent to Athens. We fought for liberty, but that was called short. And suddenly we were sent to Crete for 5 days of conditioning marches. When we got back to our ships in Suda Bay, they were combat loaded. Now, combat loading means that everything that comes off the ship first is what you need first in a military operation. Everything that comes off last is what you don't need first, but need last. During our pre-landing briefing, I knew that our only ammunition were blanks. And so I asked the question. I was a second lieutenant. youngest officer in the place. Most everybody was major, lieutenant colonel, and then our colonel, CO of troops, Austin C. Shifty Schaffner. By the way, a hero from World War II, one of the only officer to ever escape a Japanese prison camp. He was the commanding officer of the 6th Marine Regiment. At any rate, I asked him after this question, the men are in the hold right now, sharpening their bayonets, saying to each other, "We sure hope the knives will scare them because the blanks sure won't." And I said, "Sir, what are we going to shoot at them?" Well, this caused a little bit of consternation, and after he repeated what my orders were, I asked him again, "But sir, what are we going to use for ammunition?" At that point, he said, "We have 50 nukes in the hold." Well, we were aboard the USS Albany, which had 12-inch rifles, and I also had 2 8-inch self-propelled howitzers attached to my artillery battery. It wasn't mine, it was our captain's artillery battery, but I had those to shoot, and they both of those weapons could shoot nuclear shells at that time. At any rate, that's what our orders were. I was told to be aboard the seaplane as a spotter at 5:05 hours at 5 o'clock in the morning the following day. And when I got back to my troop ship, I asked to be wakened in time to make it there. I was never wakened. At 7 o'clock, I awakened to find my ship was moving. And you can tell when a ship is moving. We were moving fast. I popped the hatch door, looked out, and the sun was rising behind us. We were headed west. And that was the last we ever knew of that operation until about 6 years ago, when I got curious and wondered what the dickens was I doing out there. In 1957, about to make a hostile landing in Syria. What was going on? So I Googled Syria, 1957, and up popped Operation Wappen. And I looked at that. I looked at the itinerary that I had from the old days of my service, and it was exactly the same. If you try to find Operation Wappen in any history of any of the ships that participated, or 3rd Battalion, 6th Marines, you will never find it mentioned to this day. It is still, I gather, a secret in the United States. But fortunately, when Duncan Sandys died in 1987 in Great Britain, he had been in charge of MI6 at the time, and he had in his possession at the time of his death secret papers that his heirs found and then took to the London newspapers, who promptly published them, and they had to do with Operation Wappen. In a nutshell, that's it.
In a nutshell, that's a pretty big nutshell. I'll tell you that, Robert.
It is.
No, that is absolutely fascinating. That's incredible. And just to kind of go over some things that I know I absolutely took from that really just astounded me. You mentioned that you couldn't even be married to be in this operation. I mean, it was too dangerous. It was that top secret.
Yes, it was. But the 3rd Battalion, 6th Marines was known as a fighting unit. It had been the first unit deployed during World War II. It was actually sent in July of 1941 to defend Iceland against a German invasion that was potentially going to happen. And so it was actually sent before World War II began, and was a combat unit at that time. It stayed there for about 9 months, and then when it was relieved, it participated first at Guadalcanal, late on in that, and then, of course, it was given the assignment to attack and take Tarawa, which was one of the bloodiest battles of the Pacific War in World War II. It was also the first to use LVTs, landing vehicle tracked.
A lot of firsts.
In fact, we all wonder why these were not used at Normandy, because they probably could have saved many lives at Normandy. These machines, you exit from the rear. So you don't have to open up the gates and let the machine gun fire come in.
Absolutely. Yeah, the extra protection.
You actually have protection from the vehicle itself is like a tank.
And then another question that I wanted to ask, Robert, really quickly, jumping back to your description. You were talking about how, of course, you guys had the 50 nukes on hand, ready to go that way. Now, you mentioned that your ammunition that you had were blanks. Is that a common thing to use in military operations that way?
If you're doing a demonstration, it is. And of course, the operation that we just finished, which was Deepwater, was a demonstration, and we were only to make noise and smoke. Right. And so you have blanks for that. Our closest ammunition ship, by the way, was 3 days away at the time of the briefing before Operation Wappen was supposed to land. Wappen, by the way, means shield or coat of arms in German.
Thank you very much, for this gripping description. It absolutely, again, is fascinating to me. For all the viewers and the listeners here, we can find Operation Wappen, again, by Robert Maddock on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And Robert, I know since we're kind of starting to tie up here, there were a few other books that you have also written that you would like to just kind of quickly give a mention to in a brief description. What were those other books that you have written?
The other book is actually a 2-volume history entitled The 1300 Years War. And it is the evolution of Judeo-Christianity and Islam and their associated warfare. What most people don't realize is that Islam has been fighting Western Christianity for a total of 1,300 years. The reason we don't know much about it is because between 1856, at the end of the Crimean War, the Ottoman Empire was down to its last legs, and in fact would eventually collapse in 1923, but it was never able to fight again after that. So it didn't. And then the Muslim Brotherhood came in after 1923 to try to reestablish the caliphate. And it spawned many of the terrorist organizations that we now know today. It finally got its funding in 1956, 100 years later, from the Soviet Union through Egypt. And the Fedayeen terrorists were armed and given the assignment to begin attacks against Israel, and that began the War on Terror, which, of course, most everybody knows about these days. What they don't know is how long and how serious the war between Islam and Christianity has been throughout history. In fact, from 540 AD until the time of Christopher Columbus, 1492, there was a blockade against Europe from trading with China, which lengthened the Dark Ages, didn't help very much in the Middle Ages, but finally the breakthrough came following first the invasions by Genghis Khan, and then the Timurids. That's the Tamerlane and his group. That's finally started to break things open. With Genghis Khan, Marco Polo was able to get to China. After the Timurids, it was Niccolo de Conti who finally was able to trade in the Indian Ocean. And it was probably from him that maps and charts were brought to the West, eventually ended up in the hands of Henry the Navigator, who began what amounts to an industrial park, building ships capable of sailing in ocean waters. And this started the great age of exploration. That's what finally broke the blockade. So you can see it's been a long history, and there have been many land wars and all kinds of things. And in fact, most people know that Spain was occupied for some time by Islamic forces.
All right.
So this is the main theme of this history. There are some things in this history that many people do not know about. For example, it's the first time anyone has ever attempted to make a correct diagnosis of Muhammad's illness. For 150 years, historians have said he probably had a seizure disorder, but no one has ever made a precise diagnosis. Being a physician and a professor of medicine, I actually did attempt this, and I think I have it right. But I'm not going to tell you what the diagnosis is. I'll let you buy the books and read it for yourself.
Smart man. Well, Robert, again, thank you very much for the time that you've spent with us today. Absolutely riveting information. And all right, let's be honest. Okay. I have a confession. I'm a history buff. I actually love these things. You know, this is something that has always interested me. But I think that there's so much profound information that whether you're a history buff or not, I mean, there's so many things for the audience to really grab onto. Again, as we stated, on the line with Robert Maddock, Operation Wappen is available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And really quickly, Robert, for the 1300 Years War, Volume 1 and Volume 2, is that also available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, or can we get it someplace else?
It's also available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. The issues that are coming out now, this is the third edition, by the way, that's coming out from UR Link, and it has interesting additions that the first edition does not have. And by the way, if you'll get in touch with me after we're done here, I will be very happy to take your address and mail you a copy of that work.
Thank you very much, Robert. I truly appreciate that. Now, in our closing here, Robert, is there any last bit of information that you would like to let our audience know about Operation Wappen, just to kind of set it off on its way?
You will never read about this in any of the units that participated. This is one of the most interesting things. You go to the ships that were involved, you go to the 3rd Battalion, 6th Marine history, you will not find one mention of Operation Wappen any place in their history. It, as I say, is probably still classified as secret in the United States, but not in Great Britain. It's so the cat's out of the bag. Let's put it that way.
It sure is. Well, there you have it, folks. Robert Maddock, Operation Wappen, the war that never was. Robert, again, thank you very much for being with us here on People of Distinction. We truly appreciate that.
Thank you so much for the interview.
Look at that. I love that. Hey, it's Al Cole again. Benji, my son, I'm so proud of him. He's done a wonderful job.
How'd we do on the time?
You do. Hey, it's doing great. In fact, it's still rolling here, and I want to congratulate Benji for doing such a great job with the interview, asking the right questions, making the right reflections. And Robert, as usual, boy, you've proven that you're a master at Operation Wappen and the historical basis of that. We are very, very gripped by this. Thank you so much, Robert. And, I just want to ask you one quick question and answer it very, very quickly. No real detail. Operation Wappen, as you've been suggesting all through the show, was top secret, still is to your knowledge. Would President Donald Trump know about Operation Wappen? What do you think about it, if you had to guess?
I would probably guess he does not know about it.
How about that? He knows now, though. I have inside information, Robert, that Trump listens to my show periodically.
I would love to send him a copy of the book if he would. By the way, I'm one of his supporters, and he can get my name.
Yeah.
And he can get a copy. I will send him a copy free.
Well, we'll get the word to him. On People of Distinction, we have our means. Thank you so much, Robert, for being our special guest. And thank you, Benji, my magnificent son, Benji Cole, for putting together such a great interview as well. And people, this goes out to you, my listening audience. Education is so very, very vital. And education works in so many ways. It works in the way that we just proved, with factual evidence from our history that will then be able to spark our directions into our future. Education is also self-education, where you mastermind your feelings, your emotional intelligence, and your love of life and love of others. And that is the people of distinction way of putting it as well. And we love both on People of Distinction. We have people from all walks of the professional sphere coming on, talking their talk, and inspiring you to be even greater people of distinction you were born to be, and we make sure that you continue on that plight. Thank you so much, both of you, Benji and Robert, for our special interview here. And we want to congratulate UR-Link as well for bringing us, Robert, and such a great interview. urlinkpublishing.com. Thank you so much. Robert, how did you like the way my son Benji conducted the interview?
He did a beautiful job. He just let me go.
Absolutely. And he asked a lot of the great questions, a couple of nice reflections himself. He's doing a great job. And
he really is.
Well, thank you so much, Robert, for a great interview on People of Distinction.
Well, thank you very much.